Hi, and welcome to our latest episode on AI sovereignty news. Forgive the tongue in cheek here, but we're going to talk about the state of global data flows and a recent cable that was introduced by the US State Department. And what this menu is trying to illustrate is a lot of changes happening in the world of AI, concerns with data sovereignty, and in the end, it looks like the solutions that are being proposed are the same ones that people see all the time, which is the hyperscalers, the dependency for solutions from them as we did for cloud solutions. So first, before we get into the US State Department's cable here, a few definitions here. And just briefly, data residency. This is focused on where data resides, which country it resides in is generally the question people are asking. Localization, this gets to regulatory regulations about what to do with the data. Where's it stored? How's it processed? Sovereignty takes the legal concept a little further and talks about jurisdiction, who has governance over the data there. And localization and sovereignty are not always the same, and we'll talk about some exceptions here. AI sovereignty is an expanded version of data sovereignty. It includes data sovereignty, but also includes other things that you would want to make AI sovereign, such as the model and the compute infrastructure. And then final, digital sovereignty, the broadest concept here, which includes AI sovereignty and data sovereignty, but also sovereignty of non-AI solutions. Now, the GDPR, a well-known set of regulations introduced about 2018, I believe. And this is the gold standard for data privacy. And many countries have adopted versions of this legislation around the world. The US Cloud Act, this was also introduced in 2018. And what this allows the US government to do is to compel any company that's headquartered in the US to provide data for its investigations. So for instance, if you're in Europe and you're using one of the cloud vendors, the US government could compel the cloud vendor to say, hey, we're interested in this piece of data. It doesn't matter where it resides in Europe, you have to give it to us. And so because of that, the Cloud Act really flies in the face of what GDPR is doing. It breaks its privacy capabilities that it's attempting to provide for its citizens. Now, sovereign AI initiatives are gaining momentum around the world, and just a few that I will highlight here. Recently, Canada and Germany announced a sovereign technology alliance, and you may know or may not that Germany is actually Canada's largest trading partner here. Then the EU, of course, the EU has the EU AI Act, and they have this encompassing AI strategy, and they want to make Europe more competitive and secure and technology sovereign as well, so less dependency on the hyperscalers. And then India just recently, last month, had a huge meeting there and announced that they were investing 200 billion in the next few years. And the person here from the Adani Defense and Aerospace. Now, this organization is very important. It's India's largest defense and aerospace company out there. It's an integral part of their AI sovereignty strategy. And so the director there said AI will redefine sovereignty, and that capability without sovereignty is dependence. And that's something that a lot of countries express that they don't want. Now, the cable that was released on February 18th, signed by the US Secretary of State, is really a directive telling its diplomats or ambassadors to lobby governments, their ambassadors to reject data sovereignty initiatives. This story was released by Reuters, and they released the content of the document. And so it's a very strong document telling their diplomatic corps to say, we want you to lobby the countries and say this is a bad thing, data sovereignty. And the reason why it's bad is that it'll impede commerce, it'll slow down global data flows. It is not in their best interest. Now, the major components of the cable include the core argument is really to tell countries that it's not in their best interest because costs will go up. They argue that cybersecurity risk will also increase, that this will impede the development of AI and your ability to use the cloud vendors. And they position the EU GDPR legislation as burdensome, that this is something that you don't want, that will again impede on your commerce here. So the alternative GDPR is something that they call the Global Cross-Border Privacy Rules. And there are a number of countries who subscribe to this. It's really set to provide a certification for the free flow of data. Now, there's actually quite a bit of overlap with GDPR, but GDPR is much more restrictive when it comes to privacy. And the main reason for the global cross-border privacy is they do want security, but is not as tightly regulated when it comes to privacy. The cable also targets China and tells countries that they should be wary of all the infrastructure projects that are going on there, which are many, and they're also saying that a lot of the global infrastructure policies also come with technology and technology infrastructure, and they should be wary of the restrictions that are placed upon them. And then finally, if that wasn't enough, the US administration is also going out of their way to develop a portal so Europeans can pass censorship, and censorship that would also include hate speech and terrorist propaganda. So if you take a look at the EU and the US perspective of that cable, essentially the EU looks to privacy of data, data sovereignty as a right. And they don't view this as a trade barrier, which is what the US looks at this as. This will impede commerce. It will be burdensome to handle. They want kind of free reign for the American hyperscalers here. Now, this is a tricky one to have a US diplomat explain here, because you just dial the clock back, a year or two, and TikTok was told or banned from the U.S. or action to take the banning of it, and the solution was, okay, you can stay, but there has to be an Americanized version of the app, and it's not just the app. The ownership of it had to be changed because it reported to a Chinese parent. So a lot of actions were taken, and many analysts around the world would look to this as a double standard or a paradox. Is that, okay, you cite for national security, you force this company to take all these actions, and yet if a geography like the EU wants to do similar things, you're trying to position it as a trade barrier. So unfortunately, AI going forward, and probably has been for a while now, is a geopolitical force that countries are paying close attention to now. And it seems that they don't want to just follow the recipe and depend on them as they did for cloud computing. They want AI to be different here. So going forward, the US will continue to lobby against GDPR and say that, hey, we stand for innovation and freedom. You should not be subject to these burdensome legislations and rules out there. The hyperscalers And when I talk to the folks here, they're really interested in providing a solution, regardless of a nation's leaning toward sovereignty or not. So if they don't have any sovereignty initiatives, that's fine. You can use their offerings as is. But if they do, they also have offerings to support those initiatives as well. And for other non-US geographies like the EU, it's my belief and many that this latest attempt with this cable from the US State Department, that this will actually reinforce and motivate countries to drive towards sovereign data and sovereign AI. That's it for this episode, and here's a list of resources if you have any more questions. Thanks, and we'll talk again soon.